all the politicians or heads of state would be saying very positive, very enlightened things. And crime rates would go down, accident rates would go down, and it was always reliable. And it was proved. I'm completely satisfied that when people are meditating together or having this very coherent level of consciousness, which is how they described it, that it would have an effect on the whole society. So I became very supportive of this whole thing because it seemed to be completely consistent with what I was feeling needed to be done in society. That everyone should be in some way behaving in a very natural and spontaneous way, harmoniously and positively and constructively and caringly and lovingly towards other people. And although I don't meditate very much these days, I still completely support the principles that they were talking about. And I'm looking towards a time when the collective consciousness of Britain and in fact the whole world will rise to that sort of level. And this is what is being predicted for this time now, that in a very spontaneous kind of way, without people meditating, the collective consciousness of the whole world will rise to that kind of level. And obviously that will bring very, very great changes. But equally, I felt that people who weren't meditating would go through this very big change, this quantum leap in consciousness, not necessarily understanding what was going on. And it would be a time of huge change, which inevitably would mean that much of the way that we live would change very, very dramatically. And that maybe people would need some help to get through it, some understanding of what was going on and what this thing consciousness is all about. And so I decided at that time to leave the community in Skelmersdale and get on with my life, working towards this kind of time now. And in any case, the particular model I felt, which was the Transcendental Meditation model, if I can call it that, was Eastern in origin, from ancient India, from the Vedic culture. And I felt that most people in the West certainly wouldn't listen to that sort of thing, but would like some more Western approach to it. And eventually I found something that I felt was a more Western approach. Again, it was a very old approach. It came from South America, from the Mayan culture. And the Mayans had calendars, very different from our kind of calendars. Certainly not at all like the Western Gregorian calendar. And the calendar showed cycles of time. And the calendars, because they showed very definite cycles of time which went into the future, they could be used predictively. And I began to read the work of a Swedish man by the name of Carl Kalleman, who had done something nobody else had done, which was to compare what the Mayan calendar would have predicted for the last 5,000 years with what actually happened, what the historical record that we all know about or could find out about showed really happened. And by plotting the calendar against the historical record, he found that actually the historical record showed that the Mayan calendar worked out exactly the way that it had predicted, and that the way things have developed over the last 5,000 years was according to a particular process of some sort. One has to ask, well, where does this process come from? What does it all mean? And I'm going to go into that later in another video. But this was a model that I liked because it was very objective, it was measurable. You could see how day by day, or certainly at various times, but especially now at this time, because things are moving so fast, and we're in a cycle which is running 20 times faster than the one before, which started at the time of the Industrial Revolution. So you can see things almost day by day developing in the way that the Mayan calendar suggested. And I've done an enormous amount of reading, and I've done a lot of reading which many people would feel was, of a rather questionable source. People who are psychic or clairvoyant or would hear in some way, would receive information from some higher source, what's called channeling. And I don't claim to be any of those things. I certainly don't claim to be psychic or clairvoyant. I was told at one stage that I do have a clairaudient facility, which means that I hear things. Well, I don't hear voices in my head, that's for sure. The only thing I do hear is my own thoughts. And I do have hunches, and sometimes I do feel that I have some sort of understanding about what might happen. But I'm not going to make any claims whatsoever to hearing any other source than my own thoughts. And everything that I've come to understand has really come from my own perceptions and just my own experiences and what I've seen going on in the world, and how I've seen especially how the authorities or the governments or the big institutions like the churches and academia, the financial institutions, how they all work. I've done a lot of studying about the monetary system that operates in the West, and I've got quite a lot to say about the economic situation that is developing at the moment. So it's all about what I've been doing over the last 50 years or so that's led me to this point now. And I don't work for anyone. I'm just an individual who has spent the last 50 years looking at all this, and I don't align myself to any particular approach, like the Transcendental Meditation approach, or any of the religions or spiritual cultures. I suppose I have to align myself to the Western approach because, that's where I was brought up very much, but nevertheless, I do incorporate the Eastern approach into this whole understanding. So that's really it. That's really my explanation of who I am and how it is that I've come to the position where I feel that I can talk about these things and see the bigger picture from what's hopefully more of a universal point of view than the point of view of any one particular cosmology or religion or any kind of approach. So, having done that, I'm going to get on with the rest of the series, in which I'm going to be talking about various aspects like economics and the Mayan calendar and religions and sciences and all sorts of things. Okay. So, thanks for listening. Okay.